Section 9, the final section, Messalina is killed by the tribune. Her mother Lepida was sitting beside her, who had not been in harmony with her daughter when she was flourishing, but in her final hours of need, having turned to pity, advised her not to wait for an assassin. Her life was over, and she should not seek anything other than a noble death. But there was nothing honourable in Messalina's mind, which was corrupted by her lusts, tears, and futile complaints, were pouring forth when the doors were struck by the force of those approaching, and the tribune stood nearby. Then, for the first time, Messalina recognised her fate and took up the sword. Applying this to her throat or chest, in vain, because of panic, she was pierced by the tribune's blow. The body was granted to the mother. We now then reach the final moments of Messalina's life, right before she's killed. So the passage opens quite quietly, but with a nice sense of poignancy. Okay, Messalina's mother, Lepida, this woman here, is sitting beside her in the imperfect tense, suggesting a sustained, gentle presence. Right, she didn't sit beside her, but she was sitting beside her. Although Tacitus then reminds us, with Harold Concours Fouerat, that she hadn't been on good terms with her daughter when Messalina was flourishing. Right, and that phrase itself, Florenti Filii, okay, Florenti Filii, bit of alliteration going on there, evokes Messalina in her prime, powerful, beautiful, also immoral. And Lepida, morally upright, couldn't reconcile herself to her daughter's lifestyle. So there's a hint at sort of maternal disapproval, perhaps even some shame. And now, in her daughter's final desperate need, Lepida is moved to pity. Okay, this phrase here, right, supremis down, her last necessities, is striking for the heavy sibilance that's going on. So look at all these S's that we have: supremis, eus, double S down here, ends with an S. The hissing sounds that happens when you read it might be deliberate. Okay, a stylistic echo of Tacitus's disdain for her, a kind of moral venom that creeps even into the rhythm of the language. And then Lepida, her mother, urges her to act. Okay, she begs her not to wait passively for the killer, right? The percussorem, quite a strong word, but to take control, to seek a noble death. And that verb, right, transisse, okay, is placed emphatically at the start of the next sentence. Life has passed. It is done. It marks a turning point from which there is no return, no appeal to Claudius. Tacitus is presenting Lepida here as a rare voice of Roman dignity. She calls for, well, what's she call for? Decorum, okay, a death with honour, echoing these traditional values of Roman aristocracy. But when we go to Messalina, right, she can't rise to this ideal, right, from sed all the way down to corrupto. Okay, this bit here. Tacitus is blunt. There's nothing honourable in her spirit. It's corrupted by her lusts, right? These libidines, corrupto. This is pure moral judgment. Messalina isn't just defeated, she's fully degraded. And it's worth noting how this fits the broader Roman worldview. Women who overstepped moral or political boundaries were seen as threats to order. And Messalina has now become this archetype of woman destroyed by her own excesses. Then comes this moment of chaos, right? What does she do? Right? Well, she weeps and laments, lacrimae et questus. But they are inriti, they are futile or useless, right? Her weeping and her lamenting. Tacitus makes it, I suppose he makes the verb plural and imperfect, stressing the drawn out fruitlessness nature of her grief, right, as they flow out. Then the door gets battered down by the venientium, okay, this word here. Literally the ones arriving. Tacitus has used a participle here, acting as a noun, perhaps to create a slightly faceless, relentless image of this execution squad that's coming to her. Right? These aren't individuals, but they are almost agents of state violence. Then there's a stark contrast. Okay, ad stititque tribunus, and the tribune who was standing there. Earlier, we had ad sidiebat mater right at the top, so mum sat down. Now we have a tribune standing over them in cold authority, right? The contrast highlighted by the parallel word placements, both unusually placed right at the start of the sentence to draw attention to the physical posture and this moral tone of each figure. Okay. Um, what else? Well, then Tacitus then, I suppose, is aligning Lepida with care and feeling, the tribune with stern inevitability. Okay. Then at last, only now, does Messalina understand her own fate. Tunc primum Messalina. Right, this bit here. She finally sees the reality that she's been denying. Right, Tacitus moves on and uses this poetic word, ferrum, right, to talk about literally the iron, but here the sword or dagger, instead of the more traditional word gladius, sword. Ferrum is quite elevated and a tragic choice of word, right? It's as if Tacitus momentarily lifts the register of the prose for this final act. But even now, she can't manage this traditional or this honourable death that her mother has asked her to do. She tries frustra in vain to drive the blade into her throat or her chest, right? Again, two quite powerful words. Jugulo out pectori. There are repeated P sounds going on throughout all of this as well. Pectori per trepidationem reflects sort of the trembling panic of her. Okay. There's even a bit of alliteration and assonance, perhaps mimicking her almost breathless hesitation. You can really feel that this is a woman who's in full collapse, who's recognised that this is her final moment. The scene is quite tense and slow here. And then suddenly, what happens? Iuctu tribuni transigitur. In just 3 words, after all that fear and delay, the death itself is delivered abruptly, efficiently, and without any dignity. Okay, you get some harsh alliteration on this tra. Okay, so tribuni transigitur. It gives a brutal finality. Tacitus often uses quite short, clipped phrases to end lives in his narrative, and this feels quite cold and official, right, for the death of the Empress. And how does the story end? Well, it ends with these 3 words: corpus matri concessum, right? That's all it is. The entire fate of Messalina, the Empress, the manipulator, the adulteress, is now reduced to a corpus, a body. Notice how she's not even named here. And she's been handed back to her mother. There's no ceremony, no mourning, no disposal. Oh, sorry, there's just disposal of her body. Right, Tacitus lingers on her moral collapse in great detail, but once she's dead, he ends it quickly, as if she's no longer worth any attention. And that's how Tacitus ends his story, right? In this closing section, he gives us quite a moral tableau. We get the mother reigning with dignity, the daughter who never had any, an imperial system that executes without any sentiment. He moves from emotional intensity to stark terseness, and the final impression of this story is quite clear. Messalina, like so many before her in Tacitus's other works, is consumed by the very qualities that once gave her power.